Captain Li Tay stood on the bridge of the Harmony and looked out at the endless darkness. Stars dotted the black space like tiny diamonds, but they were so far away they might as well have been memories. The massive colony ship had been traveling for 300 years now, carrying the last 50,000 humans from a world that no longer existed. Li Tay was tired. Not just tired from lack of sleep, though she got little enough of that. She was tired in her bones, in her soul. The weight of 50,000 lives pressed down on her shoulders every single day. Sometimes she wondered if her great-great-grandmother, who had first boarded this ship as a child, had felt this same crushing responsibility. The bridge doors opened with a soft hiss. Chief Engineer Park Jin walked in, his face grim. Li Tay knew that look. It was the same look Park Jin wore every time he brought bad news, and lately there had been plenty of bad news to go around. "Captain," Park Jin said, stopping beside her chair, "we need to talk." Li Tay nodded and gestured to the small meeting room off the main bridge. They walked inside and the doors closed behind them, giving them privacy from the bridge crew. "Park." Jin pulled out a tablet and set it on the table between them. "The fusion reactors are dying faster than we thought," he said without any sugarcoating. "I've run the numbers 3 times. We have maybe 50 years of power left, not the 100 we planned for." Li Tay felt her stomach drop. 50 years. That was not enough time to reach their destination, not even close. They still had at least 80 years of travel ahead of them before they would reach the galaxy cluster their long-range sensors had identified as potentially habitable. "Are you sure?" she asked, though she knew Park Jin would not have come to her unless he was absolutely certain. "I wish I wasn't," Park Jin replied. "The reactor cores are older than we thought. The decay rate is accelerating. Even if we shut down all non-essential systems, we might stretch it to 60 years, but no more." Li Tay rubbed her temples. This was exactly the kind of problem that kept her awake at night. They were alone out here in the void between galaxies, with no one to help them and nowhere to get supplies. Every decision she made could mean the difference between survival and extinction for the entire human race. "What about the other ships we've encountered?" she asked. "The trading fleets? Maybe we could negotiate for fuel or spare parts." Park Jin shook his head. "I've tried. The Korthak traders want nothing to do with us. They say our technology is too primitive. The Zellian merchants offered to buy our historical archives and art collections, but they won't trade anything useful for them. It was always like this. The alien species they encountered looked at humanity like they were backward children playing with fire. Human technology was centuries behind what these other races had developed. Where humans still used fusion reactors, others had learned to harvest energy directly from space itself. Where humans relied on chemical propulsion and gravity assists, others could fold space and travel between stars in days instead of decades. The door chimed and Dr. Kim So entered the meeting room. She was the ship's chief science officer and head of the archive department. Her job was to preserve human knowledge and culture for future generations, assuming there would be any future generations. "Captain, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I found something in the archives that you need to see," Kim So said. She looked troubled, which was unusual for her. Kim So was normally calm and composed, even in crisis situations. "What is it?" Li Tay asked Kim. So activated a holographic display above the table. It showed a star chart of their current region of space, dotted with red markers. "These are distress signals we've received over the past 50 years, 47 different calls, for help from dying civilizations." Li Tay studied the display. She remembered some of these signals. Emergency broadcasts from worlds being consumed by their own suns. Evacuation requests from species fleeing genocidal wars. Desperate pleas from colonies cut off from their homeworlds by cosmic disasters. "We couldn't help them," Li Tay said, quietly. "We barely have enough resources to keep ourselves alive." "I know," Kim So replied. "But Captain, I've been analyzing these signals. Every single one of these civilizations offered to share their knowledge in exchange for help. Scientific data, technological specifications, cultural archives. Information that could have advanced human development by centuries." Li Tay felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She understood what Kim So was saying. Humanity had chosen survival, over compassion, over and over again. They had let dozens of civilizations die rather than risk their own limited resources. We had no choice, she said, but the words felt hollow. Park Jin leaned forward. Maybe we did have a choice. Maybe we just made the wrong one every time. Before anyone could respond, the bridge communication system crackled to life. "Captain, to the bridge immediately," came the voice of Communications Officer Han Bo. "We're receiving a distress signal." The three officers looked at each other. Another dying civilization, another choice between helping others and saving themselves. They returned to the bridge where Han Bo was working frantically at his station. The young officer looked up as they approached, his face pale with excitement and fear. "Captain, you need to hear this," he said. "It's coming from a star system about 2 days away at maximum burn. The signal is from a species called the Veltari. Their world is being torn apart by gravitational forces from their dying star." Li Te looked at the tactical display. The system was highlighted in red, indicating extreme danger. Solar flares, gravitational anomalies, and debris fields surrounded it like a wall of death. "How many survivors?" she asked. "Unknown, but the signal suggests at least several million," Han Bo replied. "Captain, there's something else. The distress signal isn't just asking for help. It's transmitting data packets, scientific information, mathematical formulas, what looks like architectural blueprints." Kim So moved to a nearby console and began analyzing the incoming data. Her eyes widened as she read the information scrolling across her screen. "Captain, this is incredible. These Veltari have developed biotechnology that's centuries ahead of anything we've seen. Living buildings, organic spacecraft, biological computers that think and grow." Li Te stared at the tactical display. The dying system pulsed red with danger, but it also represented something else. An opportunity, not just to save lives, but to gain the knowledge that might save humanity itself. "Captain," Park Jin said quietly, "we don't have the fuel for a full evacuation. If we go in there and try to save all of them, we'll use up our remaining reserves. We'll be stranded." "But if we don't go," Kim So added, "we lose the chance to acquire technology that could solve our power problems, maybe even give us faster-than-light travel." Li Te closed her eyes and thought about the 47 distress signals they had ignored. 47 civilizations that had died while humanity sailed past them in the darkness. She thought about the 50,000 people sleeping in the hibernation bays, trusting her to get them to safety. She thought about the human race balanced on the edge of extinction. "Options," she said. Park Jin consulted his tablet. "We could attempt a limited rescue, send shuttles to evacuate their scientists and data archives, leave the rest behind." "That's still thousands of lives we'd be abandoning," Kim So said. "Better than 50,000. Park Jin replied grimly. Han Bo looked up from his station. "Captain, the signal is getting weaker. Whatever's happening to their world, it's accelerating. We have maybe 6 hours before the system becomes completely inaccessible." Li Te looked around the bridge at her crew. These people trusted her judgment. They followed her orders without question, even when those orders might lead them all to death. The responsibility was crushing, but it was hers to bear. She thought about her great-great-grandmother, who had watched Earth die from the observation deck of this very ship. What would she have done? What would any of the previous captains have done? "Prepare the shuttle bays," she said finally. "We're going in." The bridge crew stared at her. Park Jin stepped forward. "Captain, are you sure? This could doom us all." Li Te looked at the red warning lights flashing on the tactical display. Somewhere in that dying system, millions of beings were facing extinction. They had knowledge that could save humanity. But more than that, they were fellow travelers in the darkness. They were alone and afraid, just like humans had been when Earth died. "Maybe it will doom us," she said. "But I'm tired of being the species that watches others die. If we're going to be the last humans in the universe, then let's be the kind of humans worth remembering." She turned to face her crew. "Han Bo, send a reply to the Veltari. Tell them help is coming. Park Jin, I want every shuttle prepped and ready. Kim So, prepare the data storage arrays for a massive download. We're going to save as many as we can and learn everything they can teach us." The crew scattered to their tasks, moving with the efficiency that came from years of working together. Li Te remained on the bridge, watching the tactical display as the Harmony changed course toward the dying system. She had made her choice. Now she would discover whether compassion and courage were enough to save them all, or if she had just signed humanity's death warrant. Either way, they would face the darkness together. The shuttle bay of the Harmony buzzed with activity. Chief Pilot Yoon Da checked her equipment one more time before climbing into the lead shuttle. Behind her, 5 more shuttles waited with their crews ready. Each small ship was packed with emergency supplies and data storage units, but they had limited space and even less time. Captain Li Te stood in the launch control room, watching the preparation through reinforced windows. The dying star system filled the main view screen, pulsing with dangerous red light. Solar flares erupted from the star's surface like angry fingers reaching out to destroy anything that came too close. "Shuttle 1 ready for launch," Yoon Da reported over the communication system. Her voice was calm and steady, but Li Te could hear the tension underneath. "Remember, this is a rescue mission, not a suicide mission," Li Te said into her headset. "Get in. Grab as many scientists and data archives as you can, then get out. Don't try to be heroes." "Understood, Captain," Yoon Da replied. "We'll bring them home." The shuttle bay doors opened and the 6 small ships launched into space. Li Te watched them disappear into the red glow of the dying system, then turned to Communications Officer Han Bo. "Keep monitoring their signals," she ordered. "The moment we lose contact, I want to know." The journey to the Veltari homeworld took 3 hours through dangerous space. The shuttles had to navigate around chunks of debris, avoid solar radiation, storms, and dodge gravitational anomalies that could tear their small ships apart. Twice they had to change course when massive flares erupted from the dying star. "This is Shuttle 1, Yoon Da's voice crackled through the static. "We're approaching the Veltari world. It looks bad down there." Through the shuttle's cameras, the crew of the Harmony could see what Yoon Da meant. The planet was breaking apart. Huge cracks ran across its surface and entire continents were splitting away from each other. The oceans boiled from the heat of the expanding star, sending massive clouds of steam into the atmosphere. "There," pointed out Shuttle 3's pilot. "I'm seeing structures near the polar regions. They look like cities." The cities were unlike anything humans had ever built. Instead of metal and concrete, the Veltari had grown their homes from living coral. Massive organic towers stretched toward the sky, their surfaces covered in patterns that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Even as the planet died around them, the cities continued to glow with their own inner fire. "Landing zone identified," Yoon Da reported. "Taking us down." The shuttles touched down on what had once been a beautiful plaza. Now the ground shook, constantly from seismic activity, and cracks appeared in the coral structures around them. The Veltari who emerged to meet them were unlike any species humans had encountered before. They moved like living water, their bodies flowing and shifting as they walked. Their skin was translucent blue-green, and patterns of light moved beneath its surface like thoughts made visible. They had no faces as humans understood them, but somehow their emotions were clear through the changing colors of their skin. "Welcome, sky swimmers," said the first Veltari to approach the landing party. The words came through a translation device, but the meaning was clear. "I am Reef Singer Kolthara. We did not expect anyone to answer our call." Yoon Da stepped forward, her environmental suit protecting her from the toxic atmosphere. "We came as fast as we could. How many of your people can we evacuate?" The colors on Kolthara's skin shifted to deeper blues. "Our ships cannot escape the star's pull. We have perhaps 10,000 who could survive the journey in your vessels, but there are 3 million of us here." The numbers hit Yoon Da like a physical blow. 10,000 out of 3 million. It was better than nothing, but it meant abandoning almost everyone. "We'll take as many as we can," she said, "but we need your scientists and your data archives. Our ship is dying too. We need your knowledge to survive." Kolthara's skin patterns shifted to brighter colors. "Hope," Yoon Da realized. "Come, we will show you the memory pools." The Veltari led the rescue teams through their dying city to a massive structure at its center. Inside, they found something that took their breath away. Pools of glowing liquid-filled chambers carved from living rock. Each pool contained floating spheres of light that pulsed with information. These are the memory pools, Kolthara explained. Here we keep not just our own knowledge, but the preserved wisdom of 47 civilizations that have died in this region of space. Dr. Kim So, who had insisted on joining the rescue mission, stared at the pools in amazement. You mean you've been collecting the knowledge of extinct species? For 300 years, Kolthara confirmed. Each time we heard a distress call, we asked the dying civilizations to share their knowledge with us. We could not save their lives, but we could preserve their achievements. Kim So moved closer to one of the pools. The floating spheres contained terabytes of information, scientific formulas, cultural histories, technological specifications, artistic works. The accumulated knowledge of dozens of advanced civilizations, all preserved in this one place. There, Kolthara pointed to a cluster of spheres glowing with golden light. The Morden shared their mastery of quantum energy before their sun exploded. And there, the silver spheres contain the Lithani's secrets of faster-than-light travel. This is incredible, Kim So whispered. This knowledge could advance human technology by thousands of years. But even as she spoke, the city shook again. A massive crack appeared in the ceiling above them, and pieces of coral fell into the pools. Time was running out. We need to start the evacuation now, Yunda said. How do we transport these memory pools? Kolthara's skin patterns shifted to urgent reds and oranges. The pools are grown from our world. They cannot survive away from the planet, but we can transfer the information to your storage devices. The next few hours were a desperate race against time. While some of the rescue team worked to evacuate Veltari scientists and their families, others worked with Kolthara to download the contents of the memory pools. The transfer process was complex, requiring both human technology and Veltari bioengineering to work together. Shuttle 2 reporting, came a voice over the radio. We're loaded with refugees, but we're having engine problems. Something's wrong with the power coupling. Park Jin's voice crackled through from the harmony. I'm reading massive electromagnetic interference from the star. It's affecting all our systems. On the planet's surface, the situation was getting worse. The ground shook constantly now, and the coral buildings were beginning to collapse. The Veltari moved with calm dignity, helping their chosen representatives board the shuttles while knowing they themselves would never leave. Shuttle 5 is down, reported Yunda. Engine failure. We need immediate assistance. I'm going, said Park Jin from the Harmony, launching in maintenance shuttle. Negative. Captain Lee Tae's voice cut through the static. It's too dangerous. Captain, those people will die if we don't help them, Park Jin replied. I can repair the engine and get them out. There was a long pause. Then Lee Tae's voice came back, heavy with resignation. Acknowledged. Good luck, Park Jin. The maintenance shuttle launched from the Harmony and dove into the chaos of the dying system. Park Jin fought through radiation storms and gravitational anomalies to reach the stranded shuttle. He worked frantically to repair the damaged engine while the planet continued to break apart around them. Got it, he reported as the engine came back online. Shuttle 5 is mobile again. But as the shuttles prepared to leave, a massive solar flare erupted from the dying star. The electromagnetic pulse hit Park Jin's shuttle directly, frying its systems. The small ship tumbled out of control toward the planet's surface. Park Jin, report, Yunda called out. Systems are gone, Park Jin replied, his voice calm despite the danger. I can't control the shuttle, but I can still pilot it manually. Through the chaos, Park Jin managed to guide his dying shuttle to a controlled crash near one of the evacuation sites. The impact was hard, but the shuttle's cargo bay held together long enough for him to transfer the Veltari refugees and precious data archives to the other shuttles. This is Park Jin, he said as the rescue shuttles prepared to leave. I won't be joining you. My shuttle is too damaged to make it back to the Harmony. We're not leaving you, Yunda said firmly. Yes, you are, Park Jin replied. These people need to get to safety, and that data needs to reach our ship. That's more important than one life. The rescue shuttles lifted off from the dying world, carrying 3,000 Veltari refugees and the accumulated knowledge of 47 extinct civilizations. As they escaped the system's gravitational pull, they could see the planet finally breaking apart completely, its pieces scattered into space. Park Jin's sacrifice had saved them all, but the cost was heavy. The Harmony had lost one of its best engineers, and the crew had lost a friend. But as the shuttles docked with the colony ship, everyone knew that something important had been accomplished. Captain Li Te stood in the docking bay as the refugees emerged from the shuttles. The Veltari moved with fluid grace, their skin patterns showing gratitude and wonder at their salvation. Behind them came the data storage units containing the preserved knowledge of dozens of civilizations. "Welcome to the Harmony," Li Te said to Reef Singer Colthera. "I'm sorry we couldn't save more of you." 6 months had passed since the rescue of the Veltari, and the Harmony looked like a completely different ship. Where once cold metal corridors had stretched between sections, now living walls of coral and bioengineered plants created a warm, breathing environment. The air smelled of ocean and growing things instead of recycled chemicals. Dr. Kim So walked through what had once been Storage Bay 7, now transformed into a vast garden where human vegetables grew, alongside Veltari kelp forests. The bioengineering techniques shared by their new allies had allowed them to create food production systems that were 3 times more efficient than their old hydroponic farms. "The integration is proceeding better than we hoped," Reef Singer Colthera told her as they examined a section where human tomatoes were growing from Veltari coral matrices. "Your people learn quickly." Kim So nodded, still amazed by how well the 2 species had learned to work together. The Veltari understood living systems in ways that humans never had, while humans brought engineering precision and mathematical analysis that the Veltari found fascinating. Together, they were creating technologies that neither species could have developed alone. In the ship's new biolaboratories, teams of human and Veltari scientists worked side by side, studying the preserved knowledge from the memory pools. They had already made breakthrough discoveries in energy generation, hull repair, and life support systems. The ship's power problems were not solved yet, but they were no longer hopeless. "Dr. Kim," came a voice over the communication system. "Please report to the bridge immediately." Kim So made her way through the transformed corridors to the command center, where she found Captain Li Te studying a tactical display with obvious concern. The screen showed several ships approaching their position, moving in a formation that looked distinctly military. "What are we looking at?" Kim So asked. "Trouble," replied Communications Officer Hanbo from his station. 5 ships, unknown configuration, approaching fast. They're not responding to our hails." Captain Li Te studied the approaching vessels. Through the main view screen, they were angular and aggressive-looking, covered in weapon mounts and armored plating. Everything about their design suggested a species that solved problems through violence. "Captain," Hanbo said, "they're transmitting. Now audio only. Put them through," Li Te ordered. A harsh voice filled the bridge, speaking through a universal translator. "Unknown vessel, this is War Prime Bektuler of the Thekhari Imperial Fleet. You have entered our territory without permission. Prepare to be boarded and inspected." Li Te stepped forward. "This is Captain Li Te of the colony ship Harmony. We are peaceful refugees seeking passage through this region. We have no hostile intentions. All vessels in Thekhari space must pay tribute," the voice responded. "You will transfer 50% of your resources and technology to us, or we will take them by force." Kimso felt her heart sink. The Thekhari were exactly the kind of species they had hoped to avoid. Militaristic, aggressive, and powerful enough to take whatever they wanted from weaker ships. The Harmony had weapons, but they were designed for asteroid mining and debris clearing, not military combat. "We don't have resources to spare," Captain Li Te said carefully. "We are carrying refugees and barely have enough supplies for our own survival." "That is not our concern," War Prime Bektuler replied. "You have 1 hour to prepare for boarding. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your vessel, the Yao." Communication channel closed, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Li Te looked around at her crew, seeing the fear and determination in their faces. They had come so far and learned so much, only to face destruction at the hands of space pirates. Options? She asked. We could try to run, suggested Yunda, who had been promoted to chief pilot after her heroic performance during the Veltari rescue. But their ships are faster than ours. We could fight, said the ship's security chief, but they outgun us 5-1. Hanbo looked up from his communication station. Captain, I have an idea. It might be crazy, but it could work. Let's hear it, Li Te said. The Thekhari are clearly a militaristic species, Hanbo explained. They probably face a lot of threats. What if we offered them something they actually need instead of just giving them our resources? Kim. So understood immediately. The memory pools, the preserved knowledge from extinct civilizations. Exactly, Hanbo said. We've already learned about defensive technologies from the archive data. Shield generators, armor plating techniques, weapon systems. Information that could help the Thekhari protect their own territory. Captain Li Te considered the proposal. It was risky to reveal their most valuable asset to potential enemies, but it might be their only chance to avoid a battle they could not win. Dr. Kim, do we have anything in the archives that might interest them? She asked. Kim so accessed her data pad and scrolled through the preserved knowledge. Yes, actually. The Morden civilization developed something called quantum barrier shields. They're designed to deflect energy-based attacks and could protect entire planets from bombardment. That might get their attention, Li Te said. Hanbo, open a channel. The communication system crackled to life again. War Prime Bektular, this is Captain Li Te. We would like to propose an alternative to tribute. Speak quickly, came the harsh reply. We possess advanced defensive technologies that could protect Thekhari worlds from attack. Shield systems that can deflect planet-killing weapons. We offer to share this knowledge in exchange for safe passage. There was a long pause. Then War Prime Bektular's voice returned, sounding more interested. You claim to have defensive systems superior to Thekhari technology. Prove it. Kim So and her team worked frantically to demonstrate the Morden shield technology, using components salvaged from the ship's old defense systems and bioengineering techniques learned from the Veltari. They managed to construct a small prototype shield generator, deploying demonstration shield, Kim So reported. On the tactical display, a shimmering barrier appeared around one of the Harmony's shuttle bays. The shield pulsed with quantum energy, creating a barrier that could theoretically deflect any energy weapon. Fire a low-power shot at the shielded section, Captain Li Te ordered over the communication channel. One of the Thekhari ships fired a beam weapon at the Harmony. The energy struck the quantum barrier and was deflected harmlessly into space, not even scratching the ship's hull. Impressive, War Prime Bektular admitted. But we require more than demonstrations. We need the complete technical specifications. In exchange for what? Li Te asked. Safe passage through Thekhari space and resupply of your vessel, the War Prime replied. Also, information you may find valuable. What kind of information? The locations of other refugee fleets, ships from many species, all fleeing dying, worlds and hostile territories. Some carry valuable cargo, others carry knowledge like yours. Kim So felt excitement building in her chest. Other refugee fleets meant other survivors, other species with their own knowledge and technologies. The Harmony could become part of something larger, a gathering of civilizations working together for mutual survival. We accept your terms, Captain Li Te said after a brief consultation with her senior staff. The next few hours were tense as Thekhari boarding parties came aboard the Harmony. The alien warriors were tall and heavily muscled, with thick armor plating covering their bodies. They moved with military precision, but Kim So noticed they seemed genuinely interested in the shield technology demonstration. War Prime Bektular himself was an imposing figure, nearly 3 meters tall with scars covering his armored hide. But when Kim So showed him the quantum barrier specifications, his eyes lit up with understanding. These shields could protect our colony worlds, he said, his harsh voice carrying a note of wonder. We have lost 3 planets to the Darkstorm Raiders in the past year. Darkstorm Raiders? Li Te asked. Pirates who attack from the void between galaxies, Bektuller explained. They use weapons that can crack planets open like eggs. Our conventional defenses are useless against them. Kim. So realized that even the aggressive Thekhari were refugees in their own way, struggling to protect their people from threats they could barely understand. The quantum barrier technology could save millions of lives. There's more, she said, accessing additional files from the memory pools, weapon systems, communication technologies, medical knowledge, all preserved from civilizations that faced similar threats. War Prime Bektuller studied the data with growing amazement. You carry the wisdom of the dead, he said finally. This is more valuable than any tribute. We believe that knowledge should be shared, Captain Li Te said, especially with those who need it to protect their people. The Thekhari War Prime was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated his communication device and spoke in his own language to his fleet. When he turned back to the humans, his expression had changed. I am prepared to offer more than safe passage, he said. The Thekhari Empire will provide escort and protection for your vessel. In exchange, we ask to establish a permanent exchange of knowledge and technologies. You want to form an alliance? Li Te asked. I want to form something that has never existed before, Bektuller replied. A confederation of refugee species, sharing resources and knowledge for... The refugee fleet had grown beyond anything Captain Li Te could have imagined. Where once the Harmony had traveled alone through the void, now 17 different ships moved together through space like a small city among the stars. Each vessel carried a different species, all fleeing their dying worlds and seeking safety in the unknown. Park Min stood in the newly constructed coordination center, looking at displays that showed the status of every ship in the fleet. She had been promoted to fleet coordinator after her brother Park Jin's sacrifice during the Veltari rescue. The job was overwhelming, but she felt she owed it to his memory to make sure no one else would be left behind. The Zephyrian ship is reporting food shortages again, said her assistant, a young Thekhari named Tekvar who had volunteered to help with fleet management. Their dietary requirements are very specific. Park Min nodded and made notes on her data pad. The Zephyrians needed a particular type of mineral that was found in only certain types of asteroids. They had enough for maybe 2 more weeks before their people started getting sick. What about the Harmony's biogardens? She asked. Can the Veltari grow what they need? Reef Singer Kolthara says they can try, Tekvar replied. But it will take time to modify the growing chambers. This was the constant challenge of leading such a diverse fleet. Every species had different needs for food, atmosphere, gravity, and temperature. The Harmony had become the central hub where resources were processed and shared, but it was a delicate balance that required constant attention. Dr. Kim So entered the coordination center, her face showing the exhaustion that had become common among the senior staff. She had been working around the clock with scientists from all 17 species, trying to unlock more secrets from the memory pools. Any progress on the long-range sensors? Park Min asked her. Kim So shook her head. We're still getting strange readings from the region ahead. Empty space where there should be star systems. The archived data mentions something called the Domain of Silence, but the information is incomplete. Park Min felt a chill run down her spine. The Domain of Silence had been mentioned in several of the ancient records, always in warning messages, from civilizations that had encountered it before their own extinction. Whatever it was, every species that had met it had died shortly afterward. Captain Lee wants to see you both, Tekvar said, pointing to his communication device. She's in the strategy room with War Prime Bektuller and the other fleet commanders. The strategy room had been built in the center of the Harmony, with seating arrangements for all the different alien physiologies. Captain Li Te sat at a round table with the leaders of the other refugee ships. The atmosphere was tense, and Park Min could see worry in every face regardless of species. We have a problem, Captain Li Te said without preamble. Our long-range scouts have confirmed what we feared. The region ahead of us is completely empty. No stars, no planets, no energy readings of any kind. War Prime Bektuller leaned forward, his scarred face grim. The domain of silence. My people have legends about this place. Ships go in, but they never come out. It's not just legends, said Commander Zixara of the crystalline Quelnadi species. Her voice chimed like broken glass. My people's archives contain detailed records. Entire star systems have vanished without a trace. Not destroyed, not consumed. Simply erased from existence. Dr. Kim so activated a holographic display showing their current position and the empty region ahead. According to the memory pool data, this phenomenon has been expanding for millions of years. It's not natural. Something is causing entire sections of space to become completely void. How big is it? Asked Captain Li Tae. Approximately 50 light-years across, Kim So replied. At our current speed, it would take us 200 years to go around it. We don't have that much time or fuel. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The refugee fleet was too slow and too large to change course dramatically. They were heading straight toward something that had destroyed countless civilizations before them. What do we know about whatever is causing this? Park Min asked. Kim So accessed more files from the memory pools. The Eternal Archives mention something called the Void Devourers. According to the records, they don't just destroy matter and energy. They erase the quantum information that makes up reality itself. Anything they touch ceases to have ever existed. War Prime Bektuler's hand moved instinctively to his weapon. Can they be fought? Unknown, Kim So replied. No one who has encountered them has survived to report back, but there are theoretical weapons mentioned in the archives, technologies that might be able to affect beings that exist outside normal reality. Captain Li Tae studied the star charts with growing concern. The empty region was directly in their path, and there was no way around it that wouldn't take centuries. The fleet was trapped between the hostilities they were fleeing and an unknown threat that had consumed entire galaxies. We need to make a decision, she said finally. We can't go around the domain of silence, and we can't stay here indefinitely. Our supplies won't last forever. What are our options? Asked Commander Zixara. 3 possibilities, Captain Li Tae replied. We split up the fleet, sending the fastest ships around the domain while the slower vessels try to find another route. We attempt to fight our way through whatever is causing the empty space. Or we try to communicate with these void devourers and see if we can negotiate safe passage. The room erupted in debate. Some species favored splitting the fleet, arguing that at least some of their people would survive. Others wanted to fight, believing that any enemy could be defeated with enough firepower. A few suggested trying to communicate, though no one knew how to talk to beings that existed outside reality. If we split up, most of us will die, War Prime Bektuler said bluntly. The smaller ships don't have the resources to survive alone. If we fight, we might all die, countered Commander Zixara. These void devourers destroyed civilizations far more advanced than ours. Communications Officer Han Bo had been quietly working at his station during the debate. Now he looked up with excitement in his eyes. Captain, I think I found something. The memory pool archives contain a reference to successful communication with the void devourers. Everyone turned to look at him. What kind of communication? Captain Li Tae asked. A species called the Thought Weavers managed to make contact before they were destroyed, Han Bo explained. They used a combination of quantum computers and bio-neural networks to create a communication system that could reach beings existing outside normal spacetime. Dr. Kim So leaned forward. Do we have the technology to build something like that? Maybe, Han Bo replied. We have human quantum computers and Veltari bio-neural networks. If we combine them with Thekhari power systems and Quelnadi crystalline matrices, we might be able to create a communication array powerful enough to reach the void devourers. And then what? War Prime Bektuler asked. What do we say to beings that erase entire star systems? We ask them why, Captain Li Tae said quietly. Maybe they're not evil. Maybe they're just trying to survive like us. Park Min felt a mixture of hope and terror. The plan was incredibly dangerous. If they failed to communicate, or if the void devourers decided the refugee fleet was a threat, they would all be erased from existence. But if they succeeded, they might find a way through the domain of silence. I volunteer to operate the communication array, Hanbo said. If we're going to make contact with beings that exist outside reality, someone has to be the interface. It should be me. It's too dangerous, Captain Li Te protested. We don't know what effect the communication will have on the operator. With Ken. Respect, Captain, someone has to do it, Hanbo replied. And I've been studying the archived communication protocols. I understand the risks. The debate continued for hours, but eventually the fleet commanders reached a consensus. They would attempt to build the communication array and make contact with the Void Devourers. It was their only chance to avoid splitting up the fleet or facing certain destruction. The construction project began immediately. Scientists and engineers from every species worked together, combining their technologies in ways that had never been attempted before. Human quantum processors were integrated with Veltari bio-neural networks. Thekari power cores were connected to Quelnati crystalline matrices. Other species contributed their own specialized components. As the array took shape, the refugee fleet continued moving toward the domain of silence. The empty region grew larger on their sensors, a vast patch of nothingness that seemed to swallow light itself. No stars, no cosmic background radiation, no quantum fluctuations. Just perfect emptiness where space-time itself had been erased. Array construction is complete, Dr. Kim So reported 3 days later. All systems are operational, but we won't know if it works until we try to make contact. Captain Li Te looked at the massive communication array that now occupied the Harmony's main cargo bay. It was beautiful in a strange way, combining the organic curves of Veltari biotechnology with the geometric precision of human engineering and the crystalline structures of a dozen other species. Begin the communication attempt, she ordered. Bo took his position at the center of the array, surrounded by bio-neural interfaces and quantum prosu. The communication array hummed with power as Hanbo maintained his connection with the Void Devourers. Through the quantum link, he could feel their desperation, their hunger, and their terrible loneliness. They had been trying to return to normal existence for millions of years, but everything they touched was destroyed by their very nature. They were called the Eternal Seekers, Hanbo reported to the assembled fleet commanders. They were exploring the edges of reality when their universe began to die. In their desperation to survive, they consumed their own space-time and became something that exists outside normal physics. Captain Li Te studied the readings from the communication array. The power requirements were enormous, and they could only maintain contact for short periods. Can they control their destructive effects? No, Hanbo replied, his face pale from the strain of quantum communication. They exist in a state of constant hunger. They must consume reality to continue existing. But every time they feed, they become more isolated from normal space-time, Dr. May. Kim So worked frantically at her research station, combining data from the memory pools with real-time readings from the communication array. I think I understand what happened to them. They tried to create a quantum bridge to escape entropy, but the process turned them into living contradictions. They exist and don't exist at the same time. War Prime Bektuler paced nervously around the command center. How do we fight beings that unmake reality itself? We don't fight them, Captain Li Te said quietly. We try to save them. The room fell silent. The idea of helping the Void Devourers seemed impossible. They had destroyed entire galaxies, erased countless civilizations from existence. How could anyone save beings who had become the embodiment of destruction itself? The archived data contains theoretical solutions, Dr. Kim So said, pulling up files from extinct civilizations. The Morden developed quantum stabilization techniques. The Lithani created reality anchors. The extinct Zarthak studied consciousness transfer between dimensions. But it would require enormous sacrifice, Hanbo added through the communication link. The quantum stabilization process needs living consciousness as an anchor point. Most of the people in our fleet would have to give up their existence to provide the quantum foundation. Park Min felt her heart sink. They had come so far, saved so many species, only to face a choice between extinction and voluntary sacrifice. How many would survive? Maybe a few thousand from each species, Dr. Kim So replied after running calculations. Enough to preserve cultures and genetic diversity, but not much more. The fleet commanders looked at each other with grim understanding. They were being asked to choose between saving themselves and saving reality itself. It was the ultimate test of everything they had learned about cooperation and sacrifice. "I need to consult with my people," said Commander Zixara of the Quelnadi. "This decision cannot be made by leaders alone." Over the next several hours, every ship in the refugee fleet held emergency meetings. Families gathered to discuss whether they would volunteer for the quantum stabilization process. Scientists debated the technical requirements. Religious leaders from dozens of species tried to find meaning in the choice they faced. Captain Lee Tay walked through the corridors of the Harmony, listening to conversations in a dozen different languages. The Veltari sang mournful songs about the cycles of life and death. The Thekari debated honor and duty in harsh military terms. The humans talked quietly about sacrifice and hope. In the biogardens, she found reef singer Kolthara tending to a grove of memory trees that preserved the history of extinct civilizations. The Veltari's skin patterns showed deep sadness mixed with determination. "Your people will volunteer," Lite said. It was not a question. "We have carried the memories of the dead for 300 years, Kolthara replied. "If our sacrifice can prevent more death, then we honor those memories." In the military sections, War Prime Bektular was addressing his warriors. "The enemy is not these void devourers," he told them. "The enemy is despair. The enemy is the belief that destruction is inevitable. If we can prove that even the most lost can be saved, then no one is beyond hope." Dr. Kim So continued working on the technical aspects of the quantum stabilization process. The theory was sound, but the practical requirements were staggering. They would need to create a network of consciousness that could anchor the void devourers to normal reality without being consumed by their hunger. "There's something else," she told Captain Lite privately. "The preserved archives themselves seem to be responding to the quantum field. The knowledge we've saved from extinct civilizations is becoming part of the stabilization process." Lite looked at the data Kim So was showing her. The memory pool archives were generating their own quantum signatures, as if the preserved knowledge of dead civilizations was trying to help save the living. "The memories want to be remembered," Kim So explained. "Every piece of knowledge we've preserved, every story we've saved, every achievement we've archived is adding to the quantum foundation. The dead are helping us save the living." As the Izadar refugee fleet prepared for the final confrontation, Hanbo maintained his communication with the void devourers. Through the quantum link, he could feel their growing hope mixed with terror. They had been alone for so long that the concept of salvation seemed impossible. "They're afraid," he reported. "Not of death, but of hope. They've been disappointed so many times that they can't believe anyone would try to save them." "Tell them about the memory pools," Captain Lite said. "Tell them about all the civilizations we've preserved. Tell them that no one is forgotten as long as someone remembers their story." The quantum stabilization process began with volunteers from every species linking their consciousness to the communication array. One by one, they offered their existence as anchor points for the reality restoration field. Captain Lite was among the first to volunteer, connecting her mind to the quantum network. As her consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of her individual existence, she could feel the presence of thousands of others. Humans and Veltari, Thekari and Quelnadi, all united in their determination to save both themselves and their former enemies. But something unexpected happened. As the quantum field stabilized, the preserved knowledge from the memory pools began to manifest as actual consciousness. The archived memories of extinct civilizations joined the network, adding their strength to the restoration process. Captain Lite found herself surrounded by the thoughts and memories of species that had died millions of years ago. The Morden scientists who had first theorized quantum consciousness, the Lithani explorers who had mapped the boundaries of reality, the Zarthak philosophers who had studied the nature of existence itself. "We remember you," she said to the accumulated wisdom of the dead. "Your knowledge lives on." The response came not in words, but in pure understanding. The extinct civilizations had been waiting for this moment, preserved in the archives not just as data, but as living memory. Their sacrifice had meaning because someone had chosen to remember them. The Void Devourers felt the quantum network stabilizing around them and responded with wonder and terror. For the first time in millions of years, they were not alone. The consciousness of living beings surrounded them, offering them a path back to normal existence. But the process required one final sacrifice. Someone had to serve as the permanent bridge between existence and void, maintaining the connection that would keep the Void Devourers stable. Captain Lee Tay stepped forward without hesitation. "I'll do it," she said. As she merged with the quantum restoration matrix, Lee Tay experienced a moment of perfect clarity. She could see the truth that the memory pools had revealed. Death was not the end if someone carried the story forward. Love was not lost if someone remembered how to feel it. Hope was not destroyed if someone was willing to share it. The Void Devourers transformed before her eyes, returning to their original form as the Eternal Seekers. They were no longer beings of destruction, but explorers and philosophers, grateful beyond measure for their salvation. The domain of silence filled with light as space-time restored itself. The refugee fleet emerged from the quantum field forever changed. They had lost many of their people to the stabilization process, but they had gained something precious. They had proven that no one was beyond saving, that cooperation and sacrifice could overcome even the most impossible challenges. Park Min stood on the bridge of the Harmony, now serving as the new captain. Through the viewports, she could see the restored stars of what had once been the domain of silence. The Eternal Seekers' ships moved alongside the refugee fleet, no longer destroyers, but protectors and guides. "Course laid in for the archive, worlds," reported the navigation officer. "The Eternal Seekers have provided coordinates for a galaxy where we can establish new colonies." Park Min nodded and thought about her brother Park Jin, who had sacrificed himself to save the Veltari refugees. She thought about Captain Lee Tay, who had given her existence to save former enemies. She thought about all the species whose knowledge lived on in the memory pools. "Begin the final voyage," she ordered. In her private quarters that night, Park Min found a message that Captain Lee Tay had recorded before the quantum merge. The former captain's image API